Okay, this is also part of your homework in Module 6, and this is in Chapter 8, page 67. You have a few harmonizations to do, and on page 68 you've got a harmonization to do. So I'm going to get you started by doing some of this one that you can then complete, and then I'll just get you a little started on this one as well. So let's read the directions. Harmonize these melodies in 4 parts. Okay, we've been doing that for a while, using only primary triads. That's 1, 4, and 5. Except where secondary triads are indicated. So if I see a secondary triad, then I use a secondary triad. But I do not use a secondary triad anywhere else. These will all be just 1, 4s, and 5s. Begin each exercise with a suggested spacing, open. Now, you may find as you're doing these that if I don't tell you anything else, here I'm giving you a little hint on the spacing, but you're going to see in these homeworks sometimes I just won't give you any other indication of spacing. And you can freely decide to change from open to close spacing. You're not always going to be given that kind of specific direction anymore. Before that was just sort of to help you get started. So let's see how we're going to do this. As always, I'm going to make myself a chart, and since I don't really know, well, I'm going to need to figure out all these chords. So let me make a kind of a complete chart in the key of B minor so that I can figure out how to pick my chords. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, raise the leading tone, 6, and 7. We really haven't used any 7 chords yet. Don't use any 7 chords yet. We'll learn those in a special chapter. So we're using 1, 2 diminished. This is a minor key, right? This is the key of B minor. 3, 4 is minor, 5 is major, 6 is major, 7 is diminished. But like I said, we're not using that one yet. As a matter of fact, the only secondary chords we're using are the ones that they tell us to use. So let's see, that's a D. It's the first chord, and notice that one chord has a D. That's always a good choice to start with a 1 chord. The next chord is C sharp. And remember, we're only looking at 1, 4, and 5. So the only chord that has a C sharp is the 5 chord. Here's the 6. Here's the 4. That's been chosen for us. Here's a D, and remember we can only pick 1, 4, or 5, so the only one we could use would be a 1. And there's a B. We'll stay on the 1 chord. Actually, when you change from open to close, it's quite easy to do if you stay on the same chord. Here's a G. We're only going 1, 4, and 5 because it's not indicating any secondary chords. So the only one with a G is the 4 chord. And here's an F sharp. That could be a 1 or a 5. I'm going to pick a 1 because I'd really like to put the 5 chord here. And I'm trying to get a cadence. Remember, it's not a bad idea to do the cadence first, actually. There's the D. We're at the end of the phrase, 1, 4, or 5 for a D. The only one with a D is the 1 chord. So if you're going to make a good cadence, 5 to 1, the authentic cadence, is a good choice. So that's why I picked a 1 chord and then a 5 chord here. Okay, so let's go ahead and voice this. This is a 1 chord, so that's B, D, F sharp. I get that from here. And it's open spacing. Remember the little trick? Start with a D, move down and skip the first one, which is B. Keep going and write the next one, which is F sharp. In other words, the next note of the chord I encounter as I'm moving down. Keep going down, skip the D, keep going down and write the B. That's the next one I encounter. And once I've got those upper 3 notes, you know that the bass pitch is just the root tone, like that. Okay. Then we're going to go to a 5 chord, which we wrote over here, F sharp, A sharp, C sharp. The idea is to try to find one common tone, because that's root tone motion of the fifth. And you can see the common tone is F sharp. Find where the F sharp is. Put it there. Put the bass pitch in, F sharp. And let's see, we have a C sharp already in the melody. We have two F sharps. All we need is A sharp. And notice that fits very nicely right there. Okay, now 5 goes to 6. That's root tone motion by the second. So that's when the bass goes up a step and all the other voices go in contrary motion. But wait a minute. This is that special situation. 5 to 6 in a minor key. Remember what you have to do there? We did a lot of homework on this. You've got to double the third. So let's figure out the 6th chord, which is right here. That's G, B, D. So we're going to be doubling the B. Let's go ahead and put the root tone in first. That's the G. Now let's go ahead and double the B. We already have one B. So look at that. That's a nice close place for a B. I'm always looking for ways that my singers can get to that note very easily, stepwise. The only note I've got missing, now I've got a G, I've got two B's, and I need a D, and I can put the D here. I'm going to keep going. Here's the 4 chord, E, G, and B. Notice that this is root tone motion by the third, so I should be able to find 2 common tones. Notice that in each case I've got a G and a B. So let's put those in the same place. The B is already in the same place. Now this is a little tricky. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and put this note here. Because we've got an irregular doubling here, we're not actually going to be able to keep 2 common tones the same. So this is a bit of a challenge. We'll just, sometimes when you can't follow the rules that are just really guidelines, you're not always going to be able to follow them. You're just going to do the best you can. So in this case, you're going to just try to get to these pitches. You're going to want 2 E's. Let this go to E. And we need a G. So I'm going to let this come down to G. Did you see what the issue was there? I couldn't use 2 common tones because I have an irregular doubling on this chord. I have 2 thirds. So it caused me to have to just use my own instincts in terms of making as many common tones as possible and moving the pitches as closely as possible and getting the right notes and doubling the right pitch. Next, I'm going to go to a 1 chord, and this is back to B, D, F sharp. This is root tone motion by the 5th. I'm going to go ahead and put the bass note in here. That's B, D, and F sharp. Okay, now the common tone, if there is one, would be a B. Look at how the B, though, in the melody has gone up to the D. So whoever wrote this melody did not keep the B as a common tone, and that will happen. That's why we learned in a previous chapter that sometimes you need a alternative way of doing this. In other words, alternative type of voice leading. Do you remember that one of the alternatives was that you could move the upper voices contrary to the motion of the bass, or move the upper 3 voices in the same direction into that chord? That will work. E will come up to F sharp. I've already got the D. I've already got 1 B. I need 1 more B, so the G can come to the B. Okay, and I'll just do 1 more here. This is going to a 1 chord. It's the same chord, but I'm changing from an open spacing to a close spacing. So it's the same bass pitch. to make a close spacing, these three notes start here and go down. I've got F sharp. Go down, the next closest pitch is D. And now I've got a 1 chord in close spacing. Okay, so the last thing we're going to look at is on page 68, number 2, and I'm just going to get you started with this one a little bit to figure out how you approach this. It says complete these harmonizations, use only primary triads again. Remember, that's 1, 4, and 5. Except where sec is indicated, meaning secondary. So whenever you see sec, you can use a secondary triad. Okay, you can use whatever secondary triad you want, but I would like you to keep in mind when you're going to use a secondary chord, don't use any 7th chords yet. Okay, just keep it to 2, 3, or 6, and I think you'll be safe. So let's go ahead and make ourselves a chart. We're in the key of F sharp minor. And here's our chart of all the chords in the key of F sharp minor. Don't forget to raise the leading tone on the 5 chord and also on the 7 chord, although you won't be using that one. Okay, I'm just going to put parentheses around that one. So these are the chords I'm going to be choosing from, and you get to harmonize this melody. Now, always, it's nice to start with a 1 chord, and that one's already been given to you. Notice it doesn't tell you anything about the spacing here, so you're going to be determining that as you go along. Notice we go to a new measure. It's always good to change the chord if possible. So that's an F sharp, and it's a secondary chord. So let's see which of these secondary chords has an F sharp. It could be actually the 6th chord. Notice that's got the D, the F sharp, and the A. So that's going to have to be a 6th chord. This asks for a secondary chord. So let's figure out which secondary chord has a C sharp. Not that one. That one does. That's the 3 chord. That does, but that's not a secondary chord. And not that one. So really the only one that fits is this one. Had to be a secondary chord. Means I had to look here, here, or here. And the only one with a C sharp is that. Okay. Now I'm back. It doesn't say secondary, so it's got to be primary chords. So it's either going to be 1, 4, or 5 for this one. And the note is a B. So let's see, not that one. Ah, the 4 chord has a B. And now it's an A. And again, it's only the primary chords, 1, 4, or 5. So I'm hoping you're understanding this. If it says secondary, then you're picking one of the secondary chords. If it doesn't say anything, you're picking one of the primary chords. This is A. The only one with an A of the primary chords is 1. And I'll let you figure out the rest of that, what those chords should be. And then to voice lead this, 1 to a 6 is actually root tone motion by the 3rd. I don't know if you can see that, but perhaps if you go over here and put a 1 chord up here, you can see that this is 7, this is 1, 1 going to 6 is root tone motion by the 3rd. So we should be able to find 2 common tones here, in other words. This is F sharp, A, C sharp. The 6th chord is D, F sharp, and A, and yes, there they are. There's the 2 common tones. So let's go ahead and, that's a 3 chord. Let's go ahead and try to put those in there. The F sharp is the same pitch. The A will be the same pitch. Now you need the bass tone, which is D, and you need to double the D, like that. Now you're going from a 6 chord to a 3 chord. Let's just look at that on the chart. 6 chord to a 3 chord. You can see one, that's 4. But remember, in music and in root tone progression, 4 is really the same as 5. So we should be able to find one common tone between those two chords. This is A, C sharp, and E. And look, they both have an A. So maybe we'll be able to keep the A in the same voice. Let's put the A in the bass, because that is what goes in the bass. And then the other voice that's missing, we have an A twice, we have a C sharp, we don't have an E. Let's go ahead and put the E in this voice. Okay, now it's also possible to drop these into a lower register, but actually this is going to be the best solution for you. Okay, and then you can move on to the next chord. This is 3 going to 4. That's root tone motion of the second going up. The upper voices will move contrary to that.